regard to their reactions. They just go into reaction, and then they cause usually results that they are not happy with, hurt others.
How then do I begin to recognize this difference between my present self and what I think of myself?
As long as you are regurgitating your thoughts and emotions, there's no space for something else to come in. What that means is, so I'm identified with my car. So if I go down, my mind, because then you are starting to take a look at what is your attitude, what's your relationship to yourself.
Can we really distinguish between myself and just a program?
It becomes part of the shadow. Some shadows are conscious, many are not conscious. And the shadows...
Here now, you're with Mozgarin, your key to awakening your potential. Today's guest is someone who for over 30 years has been helping others break through personal illusions, awaken to their true essence, and begin living from their authentic I. He's a visionary, spiritual teacher, founder of the international movement Creative Consciousness, creator of the unique consciousness coaching methodology, author, lecturer, and simply a profoundly present human being whose presence is impossible not to feel. Mark Steinberg. For me, this is a personal conversation. I went through all 4 modules of the Power of Consciousness with one of his students, and later I met Mark himself for the first time during a training in Abkhazia. That moment turned a lot upside down within me. So now, this isn't just an interview. It's an attempt to transmit the silence, clarity, and strength that radiate from Mark. If you've ever asked yourself questions like, who am I beyond thoughts and roles? Where do my emotions and reactions come from? How can I find the freedom to be myself, without performing, without hiding? Then this podcast is for you. We'll talk about the nature of consciousness, the ego, the heart space, the collective unconscious, and how to break free from limiting beliefs to start living in wholeness. Get comfortable, turn off the outside noise, and give yourself a chance to feel the depth.
Wonderful. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity and super excited about what we are going to talk about.
Mark, let's start from the very beginning. I know that for you, consciousness isn't just a tool, it's something much greater. Can you share how you first came to that realization? What happened in your life that made you suddenly see consciousness is space, not content? And to follow up, was there a moment when your entire previous understanding of reality seemed to fall apart, and for the first time you encountered your true I? Not as a concept, but as a living presence.
I'm not quite sure about when he phrases it like consciousness as an instrument and how I could come about it. Where do we start? We start with human beings. Normal state of consciousness is waking consciousness. That's what everybody is operating by. So then when we start to suffer, an inner energy of self-reflection is forced. That suffering causes us to pay attention, especially when it is psychological suffering. Whether it is a depression, whether it is a burnout, whether it is a panic attack, whether it is a anxiety attack, even melancholy. So that then turns the outward-going awareness inward. That isn't necessarily a point of awakening, but when the intensity of that suffering reaches a certain level, then there is a crisis. And then it all depends on how the one affected by the crisis is dealing with it. I was in that crisis when I was 16 years old, and my parents got really worried, because I was diagnosed as suicidal. And I was not in a good shape. I didn't know what to do with my life. So they took me to a psychologist. But fate was already weaving its magical structure, because that psychologist was one of the founding members of the spiritual movement back then in the 80s in Munich, where I was born. So I was not only psychologically receiving support, but I was trained in meditation, introduced to body relaxation, breath work, with 16, all of that. So that ignited an awakening to the point where I was free from my down, not happy, but free, and free to make a decision. What is it I want to use my life for? And the decision was solo. Only one thing was there. I want to find out if it's possible to be happy. That's all I wanted. Nothing else. No cars, no watches, no family, no villas, no nothing. Happiness. I didn't know back then what that actually means. Maybe I would have given it a second thought. I don't know. But that was my choice. So the journey then began, and it led me through many, many adventures that I write in my book about. I wrote an autobiographic novel called The Journey, which is also available in the Russian language. And all the details of that journey are in there. What happened was, coming back to the question, what happened was that at a certain stage, I think it was age 18, maybe 19, but probably 18, I attended a retreat with a yoga community, Siddha yoga community, who had an ashram, a monastery in India. And it was the first time I was introduced to that kind of energy, that kind of work. I liked it because it was exotic and I wasn't afraid. So they asked us to repeat a mantra after a particular introduction. It was Om Namah Shivaya. So yeah, oh, sure, no problem. So Om Namah Shivaya with a little bit of music in the background. And then suddenly, inside of me, my consciousness seemed to give birth to a next level consciousness that allowed me suddenly to have a consciousness of myself on a level I never had before in my life. It was an awareness of an observer that suddenly became aware of himself as an observer. Amazing. When I was driving home, I had a fast car. German highways are known to have no speed limit. I love fast. So I was always driving maximum speed, 200, 220, etc. This evening, without even thinking, I was driving 100 kilometers per hour, and I was happy. There was a stillness. I was fulfilled. There was no need to go fast. I noticed that. I was like, isn't that amazing? I had time to look at the moon because it was at night. I was like, wow. So yeah, that was the beginning.
If you're here for the first time, welcome. Subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss new episodes. Here we talk not about the surface, but about what's real. And if you've been with us for a while, leave a like and drop a comment. Your support keeps this project alive. One of the ideas in your teaching that truly struck me is this: consciousness is not what we are aware of. It's the context in which everything arises. Could you explain what that means in practice, especially for someone who's constantly living in their head, in thoughts, in analysis? And how can we begin to recognize the difference between our true self and what we merely think about ourselves? Where is that edge, and how do we reach it?
Great question. So when we say consciousness is a context, that means that is where we are coming from. Most people think that their consciousness is what they are aware of. Of course, consciousness' job is us to be aware of, but the experience of what we are aware of is created by the context that we are. So what I mean is, We take the old example, a glass half filled with water. Now, my consciousness, my awareness allows me to recognize it as a glass half filled with water, naturally. But my experience of the glass half filled with water is created by my context, meaning the way I relate to the glass. That can be, for example, oh, it's half empty. Why I never get a full glass? Life is not fair. I'm always left behind. Others have full glasses. I have only half glasses. What shall I do? You see my point. But when you have the same glass, a different context, a different relationship to that, it could be, oh, great, it's half full. I'm lucky. Wonderful. It could be empty, but now it's half full. Let's make great use of it. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, people are not living their life in the awareness of context because they are just reacting to circumstances and believe that their reaction is the truth. And that's the big, big trap, because it's never the truth. The truth is that we experience it in a particular way. That's true, but that experience is made up by our relationship to it, by our context to it, and that is the missing part in education, that is the missing part in people's awareness, and that doesn't allow people to have a choice with regard to their reactions. They just go into reaction, and then they cause usually results that they are not happy with, hurt others, make wrong decisions, fail, and so on and so forth. So the reflection that having a reaction, not a problem. But when you don't have context, then the reaction will have you, not you having a reaction. The reaction will have you. For you, it's the truth. He is insulting me. This is unfair. He is cheating on me. She is neglecting me. Everything is becomes then a reality, and then it's like a snowball becoming an avalanche coming down the mountain. Because from that reaction, you call the next reaction, they react to you, you react to them, and then we call it drama. Then relationship turns into relationship. The business opportunity turns into a hostile game of power. Nations are going to war because of perception, not because of facts. Facts are never the cause for our experience. I really want everybody to get that. Facts are never the cause for our experience. There is a fact. Sure, there's a fact. Like the glass is half full with water. But what I'm going to do with it, either I go into reaction to it or I go into creation to it. If I go into creation to it, then I have my reaction. I might like it, I might not like it. Not a problem, we are all humans. But what am I going to do with the glass of half-filled water if I'm not using my reactions for the choice of how I respond? What am I going to do with it? So it's not about like and dislike. So I'm opening a whole new field for creation. Okay, I got a glass half filled with water. From a creation perspective, how do I respond? You see, that's a whole different thing. Your wife, your husband says something that hurts you. Normally, you go into reaction. In this state of context of consciousness, you would say, okay, I receive you saying this. You have context. How now do you choose to respond to it? And that response comes from then you reconnecting to values that you have chosen. You may then be able to value relationship more than winning a fight. You may value love over being right. You may value the quality of a connection over gaining a benefit. Right? So your choices will be entirely different coming from an impersonal space of your values. Of course, on your journey, you would have needed to become clear. What is it you are living for? What is it you are living by? What are your standards? If you could be free, if you could really choose what you want to live by, what would that be? What were values that you're proud of living by? Because most people are not proud of themselves. And if they are proud, it's always related to the money they have or the titles they have achieved in their lives. No. Those people who really are having a shining soul, a light in themselves, they live by values that make them proud to be who they are. And those decisions sometimes don't pay off that much as the ego would decide on something. You may need to give up your pride. You may need to give up being right. You may need to give up your feeling of safety, of superiority. But you give it up for a reason. You give it up for letting the love flow in that relationship that became a little bit difficult maybe. You are starting to make decisions for healing the relationship rather than winning the fight. At the end of the day, it comes down to the millennia-old conflict between darkness and the light. It's exactly that. The ego, in its unconscious, reactive, mechanical state, only knows self-preservation, only knows to take care of itself. It only wants to survive, nothing else. It doesn't know anything else. So that will make a human being a slave to the ego's survival. And the results are devastating. The results are destroying one relationship after the next, including one's relationship to oneself, of course. And then it destroys businesses, because it's all collateral, right? You may create a wonderful, great business, but have you ever thought about the collateral? Yeah. Who maybe is damaged by your success? Who maybe is damaged by your choices you make in a relationship? And so on and so forth. So basically, the whole world is an expression of the absence of consciousness, the absence of a human being having awakened, the absence of context. That's the first thing. You can do yoga until you are blue in the face. You can meditate until the mountains fall off. It doesn't do anything at the end of the day if you're not getting the principle of context, if you're not awakened back to your consciousness so you can make choices that are coming from creation rather than reaction.
If something resonates with you right now, hit pause, leave a like, and share what touched you. This isn't just a podcast, it's a space where listening turns into dialogue. I'd love to hear your insights. You often speak about the concept of I identity. In what way does it keep us limited, and at the same time, what potential does it hold when we become aware of it and stop identifying with it? In your teaching, you also highlight the role of the three basic instincts. How do they operate in our daily lives, often without us noticing? And how does this lack of awareness keep us stuck in automatic, unconscious behavior? And one more question I often hear, why do we so easily believe that our emotions and thoughts are who we are? But what if they're not? Where do they even come from?
Let's start with the three basic instincts. They are built into our evolutionary survival purpose. Evolution has created the human body in order to survive. Naturally, like everything in existence on the human level in our reality, has a built-in survival mechanism. And that's for a good purpose. So the first basic instinct is survival. And the second basic instinct is supporting the first one, which is belonging. Belonging means that I naturally feel I need to be connected to others. That creates families, that creates tribes, that creates cities, that creates nations. The third one is satisfaction. Now, satisfaction means that when your tummy, your stomach is not satisfied, in other words, you're hungry, then this reflex generates feelings and sensations that make you act on bringing food back into your body, which is necessary, of course. Same for sexual reproduction and so on and so forth. So people are totally controlled by those three basic instincts. And they are not wrong. There is nothing wrong. The thing is that people are not having a perspective beyond the three basic instincts. That's the problem. So then it's only about survival. It's only about belonging, and it's only about satisfaction. This leads to the construction of what we know as the individual, the ego, the identity, to which I come in a moment. So survival is of no question. We need to have some reflex in us to survive. Belonging, there already it becomes a little bit delicate, because a person who is not conscious of the basic instinct number 2, belonging, is tending to not be authentic in order to remain in a connection. What I mean by that is that people are starting to lie, conscious or unconsciously, to say no when they mean yes, to say yes when they mean no, in order not to lose the connection to the person of importance. Could be a family member, could be your most significant other, could be your boss, could be somebody you rely on in whatever way. So we don't want to be rejected. The fear of rejection is embedded in most people's mind and controls their behavior. They are always monitoring themselves. Do I look good in the eyes of the other so that he, she still will like me, will continue to be connected to me? I don't want to be rejected, because if I'm rejected, my basic instinct is starting to fire. And when that basic instinct fires, it goes into survival. So people deep down, subconsciously, experience that a rejection, if somebody says no to you, means your survival is threatened, psychologically, physically, because we come from a history where we needed to belong as human beings in order to really survive. So the humankind is about 2 million years on the planet, and for the most part, until the last 15,000 years, we were living a lifestyle as nomads and collectors. So as a loner, as a single person, back then, you couldn't survive. You needed the others in order to protect yourself from the wild animals, protect yourself from the weather, and so on and so forth. And only for 15,000 years, this has changed, because with the invention of agriculture, we were able to build tribes who could settle and not needing to travel to find food, etc., etc. So only then things changed. So our history, the momentum of 2 million years, is pushing deep down us into becoming inauthentic in our relationships, because most of how we express ourselves is in the light of finding approval so that they don't reject us. One needs to become conscious of that whole mechanism and then shift into a courageous commitment to set yourself free from the need to be liked, from the need to always look good in the eyes of others. And don't get me wrong, if you swap to the other side, you become a rebel. Yeah, you do exactly what people don't expect, what people don't like, etc. It's just another way of being connected, because then you are connected through rebellion, through being different. So authenticity is a totally different game. It's not in the polarity of like and not like, conform or not conform. No, it's something else. It is connected to an awakening process, out of which you become the true self. So many philosophers and poets and gurus are talking about. Yeah? But it's not the opposite of what you are right now. Yeah? In the good or the bad way, it doesn't matter. So let's go back to the instincts. So that is just a tiny fragment of what I'm going to share when I'm leading trainings and have people really go deep, deep, deep into those subjects. I know we are on a podcast today, so I cannot go into the whole 9 yards of everything, but I gave you a little bit of a taste. Now, in order to survive, evolution has created the human mind. Now, that was an extraordinary event in the history of evolution, because the human mind is like no other mind on the planet. They are very intelligent animals. We know of dolphins, we know of whales, we know, etc., etc. We also know that the monkey brain of a chimpanzee is 95% identical to the human brain, right? But yet, those other 5% make all the difference. Evolution created the human mind to get an advantage in survival. That advantage was to give the mind power to identify itself with something other than the host. So every animal has a brain, has a mind, no matter how small, that identifies the host with themselves, so that when their body is under threat, they're going to go into a reaction of survival. I live with cats, for example. If I would threaten my cat, I don't, but I know what the reaction would be. I push an animal into the corner, most friendly, but when they feel it's threatening them, then their mind switches into defense, defending themselves. And that's what human beings basically also do if they are not conscious. So the human mind was created for a different purpose, to be even better than anybody else on the planet, by the power to identify itself with something other than itself. We know, for example, that a businessman can identify with the company more than with their own well-being in the body. So they sacrifice their health in order to succeed in the company. An addict's mind has identified with the pleasure of the addiction more than with the survival of the body. Their mind is able to sacrifice their life, the life of the body, for the pleasure of the addiction. So this capacity has a great downside, but it also gives us an opportunity to really level up, to identify with, by conscious choosing, with something beyond us, something higher than us, higher values. As I already mentioned, what you can do in response to conflict in relationship, in response to your own inner conflicts. So this mind is also responsible for creating an identity. Now, we all need an identity. Enlightened gurus also still have an identity. They know their name, they know where they live, they know where to walk, they know where to eat food, and so on and so forth, naturally, right? So identity itself is nothing wrong, is a prerequisite, a necessity in order to function as a normal human being. The problem is when we make things personal. What that means is, so I'm identified with my car. So if I go down, my mind knows that's my car. I'm not going to look stupid trying to find another car. That is my car. But when I make that personally, my car means I'm worthy. That makes it personal. Then we are developing what is known as the ego. So the ego is the sum total of all the identifications that we made personal. And that started very, very early in childhood. It was my teddy bear. It was my doll. It was my mom, and so on and so forth. And if we had siblings, we were already starting to fight for what's mine versus others, what is theirs. over the time of our upbringing, school years, teenage years, early adulthood, etc., we developed a lot of identifications that we made personal. What does it exactly mean, making personal? It means that belonging to this, owning this, is having the purpose to make you feel about yourself, to make you feel better about yourself, to make you feel worthy, to make you feel you're good enough, to make you feel you're lovable, to make you feel you're a good person. So the absence of an awakening creates the absence of being connected to the true self, to the light in us. The replacement, because we need something, the replacement is then taken by the ego. So we are then identified with the ego's definition of us being a good person, us being lovable, us being good enough. And that's always conditional. And those conditions are being disappointed by life's events. You will never find a person who is 100% agreeing with everything you say. You will never find a company that is 100% exactly the way you want it. You will never have a body that is always 100% exactly the way you want it. No, life is not set up to give you what you want. I hope you got that. Right? Most people complain about it. Life is set up to give you an opportunity to grow. That's the truth. But that growth involves that you are starting to see what is really going on. And then you see how the ego is so many times in the way. It blocks life energy flow. It blocks you from having authentic relationships. It blocks you from being courageous to say yes when it's yes and no when it's no. It blocks you from relaxing into a freedom where you don't need to be somebody in order to impress other people, where you are free to express yourself rather than impress, where you are free to create rather than react, where you are free to drop being right, drop the story, drop the bullshit, drop the inauthentic behavior. What you're dropping is the attachment the ego has created to a particular behavior, to a particular person, to a particular status, and so on and so forth. That's the bigger picture. That is our journey. And emotions are created by thought. There is no emotion that is not having the underlying thought. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, knows that. It knows and is beautifully used in the field of psychology and psychotherapy that by changing a thought, you are changing the emotion. I just want to remind us about the glass half filled with water. The emotion of happiness is when I'm having a positive attitude to the glass is half full, and the emotion of frustration is connected to me having an attitude that the glass is half empty. It's very simple. The emotion follows our thought, our belief. But most people believe that what they feel is a representation of what's true. It's not so. I could scream it out loud to the world until my last breath. Probably I'm going to do that. Right? So, no, emotions are entirely self-created based on the perception, how we interpret reality. That's emotion. Most people's ego is so attached to emotions that they're not going to be willing to accept that. They rather go on and on and on and on, defending their emotions, still believing what they feel is true. And that's a perfect recipe to remain in drama. Because as long as you believe your emotions are true, yeah, you're in drama. They are there, so it's true that you have emotions, but it's not true that they are the absolute truth. That's what I'm saying. You are also not your emotions. You are an awareness that is aware of having emotions. You are not your body. You have a body. You are not your thoughts either. For most people, that is a very, very challenging statement. Because most people say, no, I am my thoughts. What else? You have thoughts. And those thoughts you are having are just happening in a mind that is able of self-reflection. That's why you are aware of your thoughts, if you are aware of your thoughts. Many people are not. But you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that is aware of the thoughts. To the degree you're not conscious of that, to the degree you are in denial about that, to the degree you don't like to hear what I'm sharing with you, you remain unconscious. But then you also remain in your drama. You remain in ever reoccurring loops of what you already have experienced in your life so many times, but you didn't learn the lesson. The next person comes into your life, you think it's all better and it's not. The next business comes into your life, you think it's all better and it's not. Here we go. I hope you are recognizing the human dilemma that is true for most people in all of that. So the way out is awakening. The way out is to ignite consciousness, to wake up, give you the space, as I shared with you in my own example, to be observant to your thoughts and your emotions. And then, of course, the question is, if you are not your thoughts and emotions anymore, if you just have them, as you have your shirt, you have your car, you have your house, but you are not your house. If it's like that in you, well, then by what do you want to make the next decision, right? How do you want to decide on the next response that you are having? Exactly. Now, here you have the freedom to really go into responding. Response. And by the way, responsibility is the ability to respond. Responding doesn't mean reacting. Reacting is you have no choice. You just do and say what you're going to do, and then you need to deal with the consequences. Response is something consciously chosen out of a freedom, not a reaction. That is creation. And in the nothingness of awareness, not being hijacked by thoughts and emotions, this nothingness, which is the Zen state, they call it nowadays, which is the state of contemplation. In that silence, something can get born which isn't an outcome of your past. Something now has space to enter you. I'm not talking about voodoo or aliens or something like that. Entering as in from the field, the quantum field of infinite possibilities, as Dr. Joe Dispenza calls it, from consciousness, from universe, existence, field, quantum field, whatever you want to call it. Max Planck already 70 years ago called it the matrix. It's a term called by Max Planck. He meant the same thing, that there's something outside of us, outside the box, which only covers 3% of reality. It's a scientific fact. What you experience, even if you're fully switched on, is only 3% of reality. 97% is outside of it. You're not aware of. You're not even aware of that. You're not aware of it. Okay? So there are all the answers to the unsolvable problems in your relationships, in your sex life, in your finances, in your health, in your body, in your wellness, in your relationships, social-wise, and so on and so forth. They are probably, most likely, outside. And in stillness, the outside can come to you. As long as you are regurgitating your thoughts and emotions, there's no space for something else to come in. Your mind is busy the whole night and the whole morning and the whole day with trying to find a solution, trying to be right, trying to find clarity, and so on and so forth. Everybody knows that. That's the monkey mind the Buddhists are talking about. That is when there's a never-ending noise in your head. The voice is just not stopping. There's no space for anything to come in. That's why it's so good when you take a break and you go into nature and you tell yourself not to think about anything. Just go into nature, have a great walk in the park if you're living in a city. If you're outside of a city, then it's easy. Walk along a river, go to the ocean if you live nearby, and do nothing. Just do nothing. Just be in stillness, relax. Yeah. Could be half an hour, could be 1 hour, could be 1.5 hours. Now life will go on. You will survive. You will not die. And in that silence, something happens. It comes to you. Krishnamurti calls it the rejuvenation of the mind becoming innocent again. It might not be a total reset, but it is definitely an opening. When people do yoga with the right attitude, they experience the same thing. Meditation, qigong, tai chi, all kind of practices. With the right attitude, you enter that stillness. And there's nothing. And out of that nothingness, something is happening. And creation is always something from nothing. If it's something from something, it's change. Not bad, but it's just change. But you can change your partners, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have a better relationship. You can change your investments. It doesn't mean that you have more profit. You know all that. So creation is something from nothing. That nothingness is very difficult for the ego to tolerate. It runs into TikTok, it runs into Netflix, it runs away into, and nothing of that, by the way, is wrong. I myself enjoy a Netflix movie very much. The thing is, are you running away from nothingness? Is that the reason why you are on social media? Is that the reason why you can't be a day alone? You always have to have somebody around. You need to ask yourself that question. So the nothingness, to be with it, is its own discipline that needs to be learned, that needs to be trained, that needs to be acquired. You start maybe with 5 minutes just sitting with yourself in the morning, not doing anything, not even trying to think, not moving your body, no distractions. Just can you be with yourself? 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And if not, why is it so awkward to be with yourself? Good question. Why can't you be with yourself? Very good question. That can kick off your awakening. That can get you to the next level. That can cause you to grow massively. Yeah? Because then you are starting to take a look at what is your attitude, what's your relationship to yourself. And then you see there's a lot of cleanup to do. You got to go back to the issues with mom and dad unresolved. You got to bring upon your lips to say, I love you. You got to be able to say, I was wrong. You got to, completing your life is a big part of my work. That will be on the plate. Doing things that make you proud of yourself rather than making choices that make you just richer or just more famous or just more handsome or whatever it is you go after. So there's a whole list of things that now have a higher priority than putting in another couple of hours of work in order to have a little bit more money at the end of the month, and so on and so forth. So my point is, and my engagement in my teachings is to give people an experience what really matters in life. What really matters, because at the end of the day, we all come as we came. We all go as we came, with nothing. We go with nothing. We came with nothing, and we go with nothing. No need to be depressed. That's just the way it is. It's a freedom also, because you don't have to care about human stuff after your death. So it's kind of good news, right? Rebirth and death. Oh my God, don't get me started on that. That's a whole different podcast, I believe. Yeah, I want to just stop here to give you the opportunity also to maybe post the next question if we still have time.
It's only going to get deeper from here. If you feel this speaks to you, make sure to subscribe so you don't lose this conversation. And feel free to share this episode with someone who might need support or a fresh perspective right now. Who knows, this might be a turning point for them. In today's world, with such an overwhelming flow of information, how does the collective unconscious shape our personal choices? Can we truly distinguish where I am and where the programmed responses begin? And I'd like to touch on the theme of the heart space. What is it exactly, a metaphor or a real lived experience? And how is it connected to the true self, to who we are beyond all roles and ideas?
I love that question. That brings us to the wonderful world of the heart, of sensing, of experiencing reality from a different place than the head. The subject of love is a big one, is often misunderstood and confused with emotions. When we get what we want, we are happy, we can love. If we don't get what we want, we get frustrated, we don't love anymore. So the heart is not part of that game, part of that polarity. The heart is not conditional, it's unconditional. And that unconditionality of the heart is that what we desire to experience as a love coming from outside. But our parents were not enlightened. Our parents were normal human beings, great human beings probably, but human beings. So that means that we didn't receive unconditional love. So we never experienced what it really means to be unconditionally loved. Maybe sometimes, but it wasn't enough to create a space of safety and a space of certainty that this does exist. But we are longing for it because we feel the conditions are making what's known as love impure. Right? It's not pure, and we want purity. We want to be free. We want to be loved without needing to be somebody specifically in a particular way, proving things, monitoring, am I good enough? Am I doing and saying the right thing? And so on and so forth. So the heart space is a place from where we can build a new relationship to another that is unconditional. Does it mean that I now have to put up with something that is not in alignment with myself? No, it doesn't mean that. You cannot like somebody and love them unconditionally. Now, for most people, that's a concept that's like, what are you saying? I understand. But liking is conditional. No? I do like some people and I do not like some people. That's normal. And I believe everybody is in the same way. But I can still love means having compassion, having understanding for someone I don't like. For example, somebody may be a bully. I don't like bullies. Who does, right? But then I connect with my heart, knowing that they weren't born as a bully. They were little toddlers, innocent, not having a clue about the world. And then stuff happens. Maybe a violent father, maybe a violent mother, maybe unconscious, maybe at school fights, an uncle with abuse. So much stuff happens in childhood. If I'm assuming that, letting my heart feel into it, I know that they are in pain as adults, in unresolved pain. So I love them for the way they really are, not for who they have become. And that applies for everybody. That applies for the Mussolinis, for the Hitlers, for the Trumps, for anybody. Yeah, we point finger at, they are bad people. No, a murderer is not a bad person. A murderer is somebody who is unconscious, never received support to heal the inner pain, doing things they don't feel good about themselves deep down at all. Yeah, there's so much pain in them that they are not able to show because of pride and all kinds of things. But who are we to condemn somebody who has become a result of unfortunate events in their childhood, unfortunate events in their lives. So that compassion is missing big time. And we all find it in our heart. The heart speaks with a voice, but it's a whisper. Yeah? It's like, shh. It's not like the loud noise of the monkey brain, of the ego. It's a whisper. And we need to calm down, to relax, in order to start hearing the heart. If you're too much on the run, if you're in your treadmill, if you never give yourself space to really fall back on yourself and expand in your relaxation, it's very difficult to ever connect with the heart. But then when you hear the heart and when you have the courage to value your heart higher than your ego, your choices will create a glow in your heart. You will become a person of heart. You will start loving yourself more. The more you are activating the love in your heart, you're not only loving others more, you are loving yourself more. And then you are in a way somebody where people are attracted to. They want to hang out with you. They want to seek your presence. They want to be with you because they feel it's great to be in the presence of somebody where there is love available. And that's beautiful. So enlightenment without love is nothing. What do you want to do with it, right? Love without consciousness is also very difficult because you probably will get abused. So you need to have both. You have to have the mind and the heart. And they need to be in a harmonious partnership together. The heart should be the director, the mind, the manager. The director says, this decision is what we're going to make. This is the purpose of our next action. The mind is the manager executing that. That would be a very powerful relationship for a happy life that also touches other people. And that creates a life where you actually make a difference by your pure presence. Yeah? By just who you are, you inspire other people. And that's a great life. And the life that makes a difference is something you feel coming back to you as fulfillment. That means you are fully filled. But that filling is not coming from your next car or your next TV set or the next great adventure you do. No, it's coming from an inner well of goodness, an inner well of having done things your heart is proud about you. That is the secret. To every day do things, and if it's just one, to get a little bit into the game, that your heart is proud about you. Well, then your life will change. Why? Because slowly, you will get on higher levels of frequency, of energy. Your energy is upgraded. The level it vibrates. And the higher you are in your vibration, in your frequency, the more life supports you. It's actually the best deal you can make with life, because life has infinite ways to give you what you want. It just needs to be able to get to you, and it gets to you when you open the door. It's like DHL comes to deliver a package when the door is closed. What's the point? You got the delivery, but you're not available for the reception. So going on higher frequencies means more and more and more you're opening up to self, you're opening up to light, you're opening up to life. And then life is supporting its own. Life is love. And when you are becoming an agent of love, when you're becoming a channel for love, when you're becoming somebody who is creating love, then life notices you as itself. And life has access to the 97% outside of your box. That's when people experience magic, good fortune, coincidences in your favor, you being at the right place, meeting the right people, You have more energy than you ever can think of. Everything is starting to flow. You have green lights when you need to be on time in the city. You get unexpected cash returns or payments when you need money. Investors show up at the right time in alignment with your energy. And life is happening in what we in our teaching call the Tahiti way. I don't know if you have heard of it. And it means flow, basically. Things are flowing versus stuckness, where you then need to manipulate, put pressure, make it hard, go through the day, manipulate so that you get what you want. No, that is like rambling through life like, no, don't do that. You probably even can't, because you are listening to this podcast even after such a long time. That means you are on the journey of awakening already. And then you just need to support that journey a little bit more and more every day by selecting actions that make your heart proud of yourself, completing your past so that you have more space to be nothingness. And then you'll see things are starting to really get better, much better. So today, where we have a technology that is so much input bringing to our brain, our mind, most people have their notifications on. That means consistently there is somebody messaging you, some social media notification of a program you have subscribed. Then the others are having their stuff on that goes over to your stuff. And with all the input, that can be a digital overwhelm. Is a solution now to just switch off your notifications? Well, maybe it is to reduce it to what's really important, so to make a more informed decision with regard to what you let yourself be exposed to, what you let in. That's always a good thing. But on the other hand, the point is, when the stuff comes in, are you unconsciously holding on to it, or you let it come in and go out? That is like, go to the ocean, you hear the waves. If you get stuck with it, you got a problem. But if you let the sound come in and pass through you, if you let the chatter of an unconscious person come in and pass through you, if you have a problem with their superficiality or whatever you want to call it, then you have some shadow to deal with. Otherwise, what comes in, there's no reason for it to get stuck in you. No. Awareness has no issue, no concern. It comes in and it could go out just as it comes in. So, overwhelm in reality doesn't exist. It is a phenomenon of you holding on to so many things that you can't manage anymore. But it's not the many things, it's you holding on to it. Because your ego is maybe not letting go of this opportunity and that, and this could be and that could be. So, in other words, you are driven by greed or by fear that you're not going to have enough by the end of the day or the end of the month. It's always an ego-related energy that keeps you holding on to things, and that creates overwhelm. So you can be exposed to 1 million messages coming every second. They go in, they go out. You can be in a state of nothingness, then what you're not holding on to cannot hold on to you. Very simple. Chuk, goes through. So in other words, a Zen monk is totally unimpressed by how many messages his cell phone receives if he has one. Well, if you sit with yourself and you are just observing your mind, and you see your mind being an operation of memory of all the impressions that you have collected in the morning or during the day, the one who is aware of the mind and all that information that came in, that is the one that needs to receive the attention. Not the things, but the one who is aware of the things. What does that one need? How does that one feel? How does the one in you, how is the one in you? And that is a very different state of consciousness than when you just are fighting the information overload that has happened during the day. So inspiration comes from having an active relationship to your true self, to have an active, heartfelt relationship to the needs. You may find very different answers when you attend to you and not the things that you are aware of. So information overload is a matter of you not having taken care of what you need. You may need a break. You may need silence. You may need less attachment, less worry. But I repeat myself, the information itself is not the cause for overwhelm or digital fatigue. It's our holding on to things either by greed or by fear. And the question, if you have a thought that is of interest to you, an information, maybe you saw an ad, maybe you saw something on Instagram that is of interest to you, you just need to ask yourself, is that supporting what I'm up to? Is that in support of my mission? Is that in support of my journey? And then you need to find out. Sometimes you may not be right. Sometimes you think it's of support and it turns out it's not. Or you think it's not of support and then later on you suddenly realize it would have been of support. But whatever content you're looking at from your set of values, from your commitments, from your mission. Is that useful? Does it support what I am about to create? And then it doesn't matter whether it comes from the Pleiades, whether it comes from the last voodoo witch, or whether it comes from the so-called purity of plain channeling. Does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. As long as it qualifies to be of support to what you are about to create.
If you listened this far, you are no longer just a random listener. Leave your mark, a like, a comment, a subscription. It's your way of saying, I'm here, this matters to me, I'm moving forward, and I really appreciate that. What are your thoughts on the nature of the inner shadow? How important is it for someone to acknowledge, face and integrate their suppressed or fragmented parts before they can fully live from their true authentic essence? And why is it that resistance, chaos or inner crisis often intensifies right before a major awakening or breakthrough?
So, the shadow is a term for everything what we are negatively identified with. So that means what we are in reaction to, what we despise, what we abhor, what we fight against, what we judge negatively. So every negative judgment becomes part of the shadow. Some shadows are conscious, many are not conscious. And the shadows are a part of who we are. We have divided in consciousness, in human consciousness, the world into good and bad. Everybody. So usually we are trying to go more towards the good and avoid the bad and even fight the bad. So that whole phenomenon is turning out as something that becomes our destiny. So the shadow is not something we can get rid of. That's why the term shadow is so good, because you can do what you want. The shadow is always after you. And if you don't deal with your shadows, the shadows will deal with you. That's a law. Nobody can escape the shadows. You try to bypass the effect of the shadows by looking for the right partner, the right business, the right bank, the right doctor, etc. If you are not healing your shadows, then you're never gonna get rid of the symptoms. And there's much more, of course, in depth to say about it. So shadow work is essential in order to become free. Shadow work is essential to make your life work, because your shadows, if they have sabotaged your business before, they will continue sabotaging your business because they are part of who you are. You change your business, but you don't change because you still have the same shadows like before. You change your partners, but you don't change because you still have the same shadows like before, right? So if you experience a reoccurring issue time and again, then for sure that is shadow at work. So it's high time for people to take shadow work more serious, and even to realize that they can turn shadows and make it their allies. A shadow has an enormous power that is usually used up for, that energy is used up for suppressing the reality of the shadow. You believe you're not arrogant. You believe you are not superstitious. You believe you are not greedy. You believe you are not a liar, and so on and so forth. Excuse me? All these things you are, but they are suppressed. You pretend you're not. And then you attract exactly liars. You attract abusers. You attract violent people. Hello? All of that is shadow. And again, we have a full 8-day shadow and light retreat in order to go deep into the subject and give people tools to heal and turn the shadows around, to make them allies. But for that, you need to be willing to go into the underworld, the subconscious, where it's inconvenient, but in a safe space with other people doing the same thing. It's all possible, and you are literally becoming free from the darkness to the degree you're going into the underworld and you're mastering the challenges there. I don't know, but the reality in existence, as we know from the history of planet Earth and every other star system out there, the reality is every new order starts with chaos. So if you have a true change in your consciousness, if there's a transformation happening in you, it always has a transition, and that transition into a new order, a new way of thinking, a new relationship to life. The transition is inevitably chaos. It is insecurity. It is chaotic emotions. It is chaos. Yeah? That's the best word, crisis. If you're not creating that crisis consciously by going on the path of consciousness, then life will create it for you. That's why it's called midlife crisis. That's why you will have drama, traumatic changes that put you upside down. You can prevent all of that and make it creative if you go by your own choosing into self-development, next level of consciousness, embracing that the transition will cause chaos temporarily. And as I said, if you don't deal with your shadows, they will deal with you. So nobody can bypass the rites of passage in life. Means the inevitably and wonderfully passages from who you are now to the next level of who you can be. Your next level of greatness, your next level of freedom, and the transition, it is chaos.
If this podcast gave you something real, support it. A like, subscription, or comment isn't just a formality. It's real energy you're sending back. And if you want to stay closer, you're always welcome on YouTube and in the Mozgarin Telegram channel. To conclude, many people feel a strong inner calling but are held back by fear of losing their previous identity, their relationships, or the comfort they know. What would you say to those people? How can they move through that fear and still remain true to themselves?
To overcome fear is not done by waiting for no fear until you can act. Courage is a prerequisite for growth. Courage means you are taking action in the face of fear. You are taking action in spite of fear. Everybody can take action when there's no fear. So the price to pay for real self-growth is to be bigger than your fear, to make decisions, to go to the retreat, to go to the program, to engage in processes within those programs that are challenging, and trusting that something will happen that is in favor of your life, in favor of your own growth. So choose the right teachers, the right programs. And even if you are not choosing the right teachers and the right programs, it's part of your journey anyway. So there's an important lesson then to learn. So do not be afraid to make a wrong choice. Be smart, be intelligent. Follow your heart, follow your intuition. Most important thing is take action. Don't think too long, because planning is forever a loop, because it's based on fear that you may make a wrong choice. So go into life, live, choose, engage, do things. That is the way forward.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's meaningful not only for me, but also for others. Both those who have already been through your teachings and those meeting you for the first time. I see it as part of my mission to bring people like you into the spotlight and help others discover your work. When I started working with people, I realized that true guides often don't have the time to speak about themselves. And I don't always have the time either. But I've made it one of my goals to support and share what they do, to help others connect, feel the value, and take the next step in their own growth.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Spasiba. Wonderful.
Thanks for listening and being with us today. Subscribe. More inspiring guests are on the way. This was Vladislav Mozgarin. See you next time.